Welcome to our channel. This is Yvonne from Ginger Chick Rehab, and along with my husband Chris, we do thrift flips. We take unwanted, unloved, outdated thrift store finds and then we give them new life. And on our channel, we share the process with you all. So in today's thrift flip, we're going to be doing some popcorn tins, some tins that thrift stores after Christmas have a lot of, it seems like. And I've had these in my hoard for a while, and I'm like, I need to get these done. I find the best way to clean popcorn tins is just plain hot water and Dawn dish soap. Let them soak. The tags usually come right off, and any of that grease left behind from the popcorn or any other things that might be on the tins. You definitely want to make sure that your tins are good and dry. A lot of times I just wash them at night and let them dry overnight. I like to start off with a good prep surface. So after it's all nice and clean, I like to cover every one of my tins with this black Rust-Oleum. I know that it's going to adhere well to the tin itself, and even though this one is white, the rest of them are not. So this will cover up any of that design that's on that tin. And if you are a regular thrifter and flipper, man, can I not recommend finding some type of a turntable. Look how easy it makes it that I can put this on a piece of wood, turn this around, and get that whole 360 of this tin covered. And yes, I do the same exact thing with the lid, getting these all covered. Now this one has a little bit of lip, so I'm going to have to bend down and get underneath there, but I like to cover them all up in black. Now this was a personal choice. Sometimes I have taped off the handles, or if I can remove the handles to keep them that silver color, I do, but these were not able to be removed, and I don't think that it matters whether it's a silver color or it's going to be painted the same color as the rest of the tin. I find that using the black spray paint before moving on to my white, just one covers all that design, all this red. I don't even have to use as many coats of the white. Just there's something about covering these up black first, making that even color, that I only have to do a couple coats of the white. So this is what works for me. And if you are doing popcorn tins or sometimes the tins yourself, just do what works for you. Now, after they are good and dry, I like to move on to some type of a clear coat. And I'm just using the Rust-Oleum clear coat in matte today to seal these in before moving on to my white. I don't want to take a chance of anything making a gray mess as it mixes together. I don't think it will, but just to be on the safe side, a little bit of this matte spray goes a long way. So now to get these tins spray painted up white, I chose this ultra matte. Not sure what the difference between the matte and the ultra matte is, but I was curious and it was the same price. So I'm going through and giving these a nice coat. You just have to learn what works for you when you go into spray painting. I've learned how far I need to be away from the tin. I know how long I can hold on to that handle. The last thing you want is any drips or runs happening on tins, because it does not really look very good for you to have to sand a tin especially. So just go around a little bit, getting it covered. I do go around a couple times, just making sure that I'm all covered. I rather put it on lightly and go back through. Now I did go back in and look to see if any areas needed a second coat, and then let them completely dry overnight, and this is what they turned out looking like. I thought for this tin makeover I would use this beautiful Tim Holtz decoupage paper that I got off of Amazon. I just absolutely love it. There was a 3-pack when I bought it, and I just fell in love with those butterflies. So what I'm going to do on this tin is I'm going to wrap it completely around. I'm matching my end seam to where the seam of this tin is, and then cutting off just a little bit extra. I'm not sure how much this paper will stretch or not stretch when I'm Mod Podging it. So I'm starting off right at that seam, just putting a generous amount of the Mod Podge on, just using a foam applicator. Now I'm just trying to match up the seam to the decoupage paper with the seam of this popcorn tin, and then just pressing it down, trying to keep it nice and straight. I know I'll probably have a little bit of creases, but it'll give it that homemade look. So I'm just working down the tin, putting a little bit of Mod Podge, straightening my paper out, trying to keep it level. I did actually find that a little bit on the harder side to do. The paper shifted. It did stretch more than I thought that it would, but just keep rearranging. You have a little bit of time to play with it. I did find here though, even though I think this tin is pretty even all the way down, I did end up having to do a little bit of crease to keep that straight top. I guess I'm more worried about seeing that visual of it being straight than I am worried about having a crease on this paper. And then I just kept on working the whole way down until I got to the end. Now I could have cut that excess off. I wasn't really too worried about it overlapping. It's right at the back, it's right at the seam, so I just chose to leave it there. But can you see how it twists just a little bit more than I wanted it to? So the paper did actually stretch out, because I almost cut this even when I cut it, so that definitely the paper did stretch. So here I'm just going to make sure that my line on top and my line on bottom are even, and then the paper will just plain and simply have a crease in it. When I got the end piece where it was pleasing to my eye, I'm just getting some more Mod Podge on there. Then I'll go around the entire piece one more time on the top, putting some Mod Podge over it to seal it in, and then just working on any of the creases and making sure that it's straight. Whatever's pleasing to your eye is what works. Then I'm going to go back in with a wet rag and get any of that extra Mod Podge that had gotten off onto the tin. Now actually, when I am looking for tins like this, I definitely love this milk container type of a top on these. So I have yet to get to use these re-stamps that I bought from Amazon, so I'm super excited to give these a try. Okay, yeah, it's a milk tin, so of course I have to use a cow on it, so I'm getting out my IOD animal stamps. Now I will say that usually I stamp right on the tin, or I make a stencil off my Cricut or Silhouette, but I'm going to be trying this technique that everybody does with the tissue paper. So why not? This will actually be easier, because if my stamp doesn't turn out, then I don't have to worry about that imperfectly perfect type of stamping on the tin. So I'm just going in with some of the Stays on ink and a piece of Dollar Tree tissue paper. So now I'm getting my cow all inked up, placing it onto the tissue paper, pressing down nice and hard, doing kind of like a 10-second count, letting that ink transfer to that tissue paper. So now this will be more of an oval. I'm not going to be able to make a complete circle because of how long the cow is. So I'm just doing what's pleasing to my eye, the spacing from the cow's body to the curve of this re-stamp. And I ended up, this re-stamp had some little flowers at the end that I didn't like. So this is actually, I cut those off. So I just had the greenery. As you see, I just kind of laid a ruler down, trying to keep it as level as I can. I know I can't really stick a piece of tape on tissue paper very well. I'm not sure how that'll work, so I'm just trying. It may not be perfect, but it will be what it'll be, and I will be happy with it. I'm not sure if there's an easier way to do this, but this is just what's working for me, just eyeballing where I want this piece of wreath to be. There ended up being quite a bit of spacing at the top, in between the bottom and the top, so I thought I could put some letters in there, and I played around with what letters that I had. Some were too big to make the words that I was thinking, like dairy or fresh or milk, so I just ended up going with these lowercase for established, and then putting a year down at the bottom. I know that the EST is a little bit far apart, but that's just how those letters were. Now I'm going to go in and try to cut as close to the image as I can. So I'm not sure, do you all have an easier way to cut tissue paper? Because, oh my gosh, these are very sharp scissors. I even tried, I don't know, I had a hard time making cuts on this tissue paper. Sometimes it kind of wanted to tear more than it wanted to cut. So if you all have any suggestions, let me know. And after going in on that tissue paper, cutting off anything else that I did not like, trying to get as close to the edge as I could, trying to make it as round as I could, was not an easy task. So I just absolutely love how this is already turning out. So yep, I'm just going to use some of that Mod Podge underneath and work from the middle out to get it to be nice and centered. I have those lint rollers on the side. Definitely recommend that TikTok hack so your object does not roll, making sure that I am centered with my image in between those handles. And then just plain and simply using my hands to rub it down, working that image. I'm putting a little bit more of that Mod Podge back on top of it. Luckily, I had done some canvases with the images, so I know that the Stays-On ink does not smear when adding the Mod Podge on it. And going back around that image with a wet wipe, getting of that extra Mod Podge that's just on the tin and not on the tissue paper off as best as I can. I have to say, this Tim Holtz stamp set is one of my favorites, and I know it's been out of stock. This is one of my little cheats. I set those stamp sets on where I want them to be on that tin. I take that acrylic block and I grab them off. That way that I know when I'm putting them onto the tissue paper, I know my spacings. That same thing with that cow. That way I knew that it was going to be on acrylic block. It was kind of, not that I was centering the cow, but for these, this is definitely going to help me keep my spacing. And I was toying with the idea of putting that receipt on the back of it, but I don't think that would have done anything for this type of a milk can. So I just nixed that idea and then just doing the 3 animals. And then 3 times was a charm for this one. I could not get that little cow to come out clear, but did you need to watch all my mistakes? I do think that it's less stressful by stamping on that tissue paper first and then be able to put the image on. That way, if, like the cow who didn't want to turn out clearly, I could have kept just stamping it. So that is a nice hack of doing this on that tissue paper. So same thing, smooth it out with my hand and then finish it up with some more Mod Podge on the top. So now who says they all have to be cow related because they have that milk can look? So I actually, as a searching Pinterest, looking up old tin ideas, came across a pig with pure lard. And I'm like, oh my goodness, IOD stamps have that pig, so perfect. Now after doing this pure and this lard, I probably should have flipped my stamp the longer way so I could have centered my words a little bit better, but I was centering it with the pig is what I was looking at. But if I would to do it over after I'm in the editing mode where I've already done the project, sometimes you look back and think going, oh, I could have done that a little bit different to get those words to center up better, but this is just what I did for this one. So if you didn't hear me earlier, this was a 3-pack that I ordered off Amazon of these 3 different designs. I'm drawn to black and white. That's just what my eye likes. So I'm going to be using this one on these other tins. So I thought, well, maybe that'll be easier if I to get my Cricut cutter with that sharp blade to cut this at a straight line. And nope, all it did was tear it. Oop, that didn't work either. Whether I started at the edge or whether I put it in the middle of the tissue paper to begin, or the decoupage paper to begin with, plain and simply, I just had to cut it with scissors. So I actually added an extra tin that I had found thrifting and quickly got that sprayed up. So I actually have 2 of the exact same size. So I'm going to do them kind of matching. I just love the pattern, just the fun little graffiti almost pattern of this, almost a newspaper print. I just absolutely love these decoupage papers. Now this time, instead of making it go all the way around the can, which I felt like I struggled a little bit with because of the paper stretching and getting those creases, so I just cut basically from the handle to handle size of a square and I'm going to be putting it on this way. That way it's a little bit more flat. Cutting a more workable piece was definitely a little bit less stressful, not having any of those crinkle marks. Definitely for my perfectionist OCD, I'm like, okay, I can do this. So when I did those canvases, those Dollar Tree canvases with these same prints, I did some watered down antiquing wax and just absolutely loved how it made all the details pop. I'm just taking some of that antiquing mixture, going around the edges, and then rubbing it in, kind of trying to blend where that line is of where the tissue paper is and where the tin is. I could really tell where the antiquing wax got onto the white tin, so then I chose to take it and go around the entire tin. So on the top of this, it has that little bit of detail, so I thought if I went in a little bit heavier with the antiquing wax, if I could get that image to pop just a little bit more. I didn't really want to distress the piece. I could have, but sometimes I don't find that Rust-Oleum spray paint on tin really distresses very nice. So then I just proceed working around the tin, getting any of there, where there's some details like on these handles, a little bit more of that antiquing wax. Now I'm going to go in and do the same thing to this little pig, and I really want it to hit all those edges, all those little squares on this tin itself. Now for this little one, I took that tape off the little wooden handle and gave it just some straight of the Waverly antiquing wax to give it that aged look, and then did the same thing with this one, wiped that down with that watered down antiquing wax. Now as this was drying, boy did that label stick out way more than I wanted it to, especially since I did not have clean cuts. And then it just wasn't what was wet, was showing up really well on those edges, just was not showing up when it dried. So now I'm going in with some of that Waverly white wax. I know that it looks yellow, but I really didn't like how this was turning out. And if you watched my channel before, I always say just keep doing something till you love it. It's just paint. So this is what they looked like the next morning. I am still not in love with that label at all. It just completely grabbed. And then why was this one's different? They were all dry. So I love the little stacked ones, but I am not in love with the other two. So I was actually going to take the labels off, soak them in some hot water, but as I was rubbing on them with just a washcloth, it was actually just taking that over wax that had been built up on the label off. And I'm like, well, thank you, God. And it actually did not take, it didn't take the wax off the tin itself, just on that label. I had not sealed these in yet because I was not completely happy. So God wink moment, just working through it. So now I'm going back in and taking some of that the Waverly white wax around the corners and making sure that I don't really see that bad cut that I made on this label. But it definitely was a God wink moment, just being able to wipe off that excess and blend it in. You can see right here how where I left the lid on when I was waxing it, how it didn't remove that wax. So that wax is on there good, but probably because the Mod Podge wasn't sealed in yet, I was able to remove that antiquing wax. But unfortunately, I can still see that the edge of that label that's bothering me. So I ended up getting a little bit of the apple barrel white and a little bit of that Waverly white wax and mixing the two together to kind of blend, doing a dabbing motion, kind of just blending it until I'm happy with it. And you know me, if I am doing a project and things don't work out, I want to share them with you because I can't imagine that I'm the only one that these happen to. But I always want to show how I fix them. I don't want to have to throw something away. I paid money for it. My time is worth something. So why not keep working at it until I get it to the way I want it to be and share it with you all how I did it. So now I should listen to Chris because he liked them just the plain white without the antiquing before I ever did the antiquing. But I said I saw other people do it, so I had to give it a try, but that was okay. I did the final results. I love. That is what matters. Now that I have them the way that I am now happy with them, I'm going to seal them in with some of this clear coat Rust-Oleum in matte. And for the three with the decoupage paper, I left good enough alone. They are beautiful. That paper speaks for themselves. I thought about adding some jute or some kind of a brown string to these, but I just think that they are beautiful just the way they are. They would definitely be a simple flip. So I thank you so much for watching today's video, and what was your favorite? And did we inspire you in any way to look at thrift store finds in a new way? I thank you so much for watching today's video, and if you were part of our YouTube family, thank you so much. And if you're new to our channel and checking out the content for the first time, please consider hitting that subscription button along with the notification bell. Thanks again for watching.